The Second World War fundamentally changed the nature of land warfare, emphasizing speed, armor, and firepower like never before. The success of the German blitzkrieg in 1940 sent shockwaves through the Allied military establishment, forcing a complete and urgent reevaluation of defensive strategy. American military planners observed the stunning speed of the German armored thrusts and concluded that traditional tank-on-tank combat was an outdated or insufficient response to this new mobile threat. They theorized a dedicated counterforce, a mobile and highly specialized unit designed solely for the destruction of enemy armor, which led to the creation of the Tank Destroyer Command. This was a unique and controversial doctrine, separating the mission of fighting enemy tanks from the main tank force, which was instead tasked with supporting infantry operations. German officers, steeped in the tradition of heavy, multi-role tanks like the formidable Panzer series, viewed this American specialized approach with considerable skepticism and outright derision. They saw the initial U.S. tank destroyers as lightly armored, undergunned, and poorly matched against the formidable weight of the new generation of German heavy armor. Early U.S. designs, such as the M3 gun motor carriage and later the M10 Wolverine, were indeed compromises, often built on medium tank chassis and retaining open-top turrets to save weight and maximize visibility. These early destroyers seemed to prove the German point, often struggling to penetrate the thick frontal armor of the fearsome Panther and Tiger tanks, especially in head-on engagements. The Germans openly scoffed at the idea of a vehicle designed to be less armored than its enemy, finding the whole premise of trading armor for mobility to be strategically unsound in a war of attrition. This dismissive attitude, however, fundamentally misunderstood the core principle of the tank destroyer doctrine, which was not about standing and fighting, but about a rapid, tactical ambush and an even faster withdrawal. The M10 was relatively slow, hindering the very mobile defense doctrine it was meant to embody, but a true revolution was already in the pipeline, a vehicle that would force the German high command to rethink their laughter. That revolution would be the M18, a vehicle that would embody the American doctrine of speed and aggression in its purest and most devastating form, finally demonstrating the true potential of the mobile tank killer. The ultimate goal was not to engage in a protracted brawl, but to deliver a massive punch and then simply vanish, making the battlefield a confusing and deadly place for the heavy, slow-turning German machines. The United States Army established the Tank Destroyer Force in December 1941, making it a distinctive and separate branch of the Armored Corps with its own tactical philosophy and training regimen. This new force was a direct acknowledgement that existing American tank designs, primarily the M3 and M4 Sherman, would be outclassed in a direct confrontation with the impending generation of powerful German tanks. The foundational concept was that tank destroyers should use a fire and maneuver approach, relying on their speed to flank and ambush, rather than engaging in the pitched battles of armored slugfests. The doctrine explicitly stated that a tank destroyer's best defense was its speed and its ability to surprise the enemy, moving into position quickly, firing a lethal salvo, and then withdrawing before the Germans could effectively target them. This required vehicles that were fundamentally different from the standard tanks, prioritizing high road speed, a quick-firing gun, and maximum situational awareness over thick, heavy armor protection. The official requirement was for a vehicle capable of achieving speeds in excess of 40 miles per hour, a blistering pace for any military vehicle of the era, let alone a combat track. The planners believed this high velocity would allow the tank destroyer battalions to plug gaps in the defensive line with lightning speed, respond to breakthroughs, and set up rapid-fire ambushes from unexpected vectors. German armored tactics were heavily centered on the methodical application of overwhelming force, prioritizing heavy armor and powerful, long-range guns, which naturally led their commanders to scoff at the American emphasis on speed. They had not truly grasped the strategic value of a vehicle that could arrive at a flank attack position faster than their heavy tanks could traverse their turrets, and this arrogance would prove costly. The German armored doctrine often saw their tanks as both offensive spearheads and defensive strongpoints, whereas the Americans viewed the tank destroyer as a specialized surgical tool, a precise counter to the spearhead itself. The initial M10, while a capable vehicle and a necessary stopgap, was built on the M4 Sherman chassis, which limited its top speed and maneuverability, not fully realizing the doctrine's potential. This compromise in design led to the need for a truly dedicated platform, one designed from the ground up to achieve the almost impossibly high speeds that the tank destroyer command demanded for its mobile ambush tactics. The doctrine itself was not a failure, but it needed the perfect instrument to execute its bold and unconventional vision, a machine that could literally outrun the enemy's ability to react and counterattack effectively. The ultimate expression of this unique tactical mindset was soon to arrive, a vehicle so fast that its nickname, the Hellcat, felt entirely appropriate to its sudden, devastating, and fleeting presence on the battlefield. The urgency of the early war environment dictated that the first U.S. tank destroyers were adapted from existing chassis, a decision that inevitably introduced significant compromises in performance and capability. The earliest experiment was the M3 gun motor carriage, a 75mm anti-tank gun mounted directly onto the chassis of a half-track, which offered mobility but virtually no protection for the crew in direct fire engagements. Following the half-track, the M10 Wolverine was developed, marking a huge step forward by placing a 3-inch, 76.2mm gun in an open-top turret on a modified M4 Sherman medium tank hull. While the M10 was the backbone of the tank destroyer force for much of the early fighting, it suffered from a fundamental flaw that hampered the core doctrine. It was too slow to be a true destroyer. The M10's road speed topped out around 30 miles per hour, which was decent for a tank, but fell far short of the high-speed requirements necessary for rapid strategic redeployment and lightning-fast flanking maneuvers. Its heavy armor, inherited from the Sherman, was still insufficient to stop the high-velocity rounds of the German 88mm gun and its successors, meaning it retained the vulnerability without the compensating speed advantage. The turret was also infamously slow to traverse, requiring the whole vehicle to be maneuvered into position for a quick shot, a dangerous delay in the heat of a fast-moving armored engagement. This led German tankers to quickly identify the M10 as a primary target, but also as a somewhat predictable opponent, whose slow reaction time could be exploited by more aggressive and experienced crews. The open-top turret, intended to provide maximum visibility and reduce weight, was another point of vulnerability, leaving the crew exposed to artillery shell fragments, snipers, and close-range mortar fire. Field reports indicated a growing frustration among American crews, who felt they were operating a stopgap measure rather than the specialized, lightning-fast killer the doctrine had promised them. It became clear to the designers and the tank destroyer command that a complete break from the medium tank chassis was necessary to achieve the desired blend of speed, firepower, and agility. The next generation needed a dedicated, lightweight engine and suspension system that could turn the entire vehicle into a high-speed projectile, sacrificing the heavy armor that was failing to protect them anyway. The search for this perfect balance between fire and maneuver led to the development of the vehicle that would truly revolutionize the tank destroyer corps and finally put the German mockery to rest. The lessons learned from the M10's performance in North Africa and Italy proved invaluable, demonstrating exactly where the compromises lay and how the next design must overcome those inherent speed and agility limitations. The design that would eventually become the M18 Hellcat originated from a 1942 request for a highly mobile vehicle carrying a new, powerful gun, marking a complete departure from previous design philosophies. Instead of adapting an existing tank chassis, the designers started from a clean slate, with the singular goal of creating the fastest tracked armored vehicle in the world. The engineering team developed a revolutionary torsion bar suspension system, a crucial innovation that allowed the vehicle to handle the stresses of high-speed travel over rough, uneven terrain. A lightweight, yet powerful Continental R975 C4 9-cylinder radial engine was selected, the same engine widely used in American aircraft, providing an incredible power-to-weight ratio for the light hull. The entire chassis was designed to be as light as possible, utilizing thin, sloped armor that could deflect small arms fire, but was never intended to stand up to heavy anti-tank rounds. This radical prioritization of speed over protection was a direct and unflinching commitment to the core of the tank destroyer doctrine: get in fast, hit hard, and get out even faster. The vehicle was christened the Hellcat, a nickname that would become synonymous with a high-velocity, hit-and-run fighting style that befuddled and frustrated the heavily armored German forces. Its top road speed officially reached 55 miles per hour, but crews frequently reported pushing the vehicle well past 60, making it not only the fastest tank destroyer, but one of the fastest vehicles on the entire World War II battlefield. This unprecedented speed was the Hellcat's entire identity, the feature that truly justified its existence and provided its crew with a tactical advantage unavailable to any other armored fighting vehicle. The massive reduction in weight allowed the new automatic transmission and suspension to perform with incredible responsiveness, giving the Hellcat a maneuverability unmatched by its heavier counterparts. The open-top turret was retained from the M10, but this time, its rotation speed was vastly improved, allowing the crew to quickly aim and track targets, a critical component for its intended ambush role. Every aspect of the M18's construction, from the thinness of its steel plating to the choice of its powerful, air-cooled engine, was a testament to the belief that velocity was the ultimate defense. The final product was an armored machine that looked less like a traditional tank and more like a high-speed, military-grade sports car, designed to exploit the weaknesses of the slower, bulkier enemy. The Hellcat was the perfect physical manifestation of the American tank destroyer theory, ready to prove that a light touch and incredible speed could overcome the brute force of the German Panzerwaffe. The Hellcat's legendary speed came at the explicit and non-negotiable cost of its armor protection, a design trade-off that placed immense mental and physical pressure on its five-man crew. The frontal armor on the M18 was only half an inch thick, sufficient only for warding off small arms fire and shell fragments, but utterly useless against even medium-caliber German anti-tank guns. This vulnerability meant that any hit from a German Panther or Tiger tank, or even a well-placed round from a Panzer IV, was almost guaranteed to be catastrophic, often resulting in a total loss of the vehicle and its crew. The crews knew their role was essentially one of a high-stakes, single-shot ambush, where a missed shot or a moment of hesitation would almost certainly lead to their immediate and violent destruction. The open-top turret, a feature inherited from the M10, maximized the crew's visibility and decreased the vehicle's overall weight, but it left them dangerously exposed to aerial strafing and tree-burst artillery fire. In the cramped confines of the turret, the crew members often had to wear an extra layer of flak vests and steel helmets, a small and often futile measure against the intense realities of the European battlefield. This unique combination of extreme speed and extreme vulnerability fostered a particular kind of tank destroyer crewman, aggressive, highly trained, and deeply reliant on communication and speed for survival. Their success was predicated entirely on the ability of the driver and gunner to execute the shoot and scoot maneuver with flawless precision, vanishing from a firing position the instant the round left the barrel. The lack of heavy armor also meant the Hellcat could easily navigate terrain that would bog down or slow the massive German heavy tanks, allowing them to access flanking positions no other vehicle could reach. A Hellcat crewman's motto essentially became, "Don't get hit," demanding an almost prescient tactical awareness to avoid the concentrated fire that the German response would certainly bring. They had to treat every engagement as a matter of pure evasion, understanding that the only armor that truly mattered was the distance and speed they could put between themselves and the enemy. The crews found ingenious ways to compensate, often utilizing natural cover to the maximum extent, digging their vehicles into hull-down positions, and relying on infantry and scout reports for early warnings. This inherent risk elevated the M18 Hellcat from a mere machine to a demanding and unforgiving weapon system, one that rewarded the boldest and most tactically astute crews with survival and victory. The psychological toll of knowing your vehicle could be pierced by virtually any enemy cannon at any angle was a constant companion, yet they still pressed the attack, relying on the one thing the Germans did not have: raw, blistering velocity. The armament chosen for the M18 Hellcat was the M1A 176mm high-velocity gun, a weapon that became the focal point of a heated debate within the Allied forces regarding firepower versus utility. The 76mm gun was a significant improvement over the older 75mm cannons, primarily due to its longer barrel, which provided a much higher muzzle velocity, translating into greater armor-piercing capability. This gun was specifically designed to fire a specialized high-velocity, armor-piercing round that, under ideal conditions, had a reasonable chance of penetrating the side and rear armor of the formidable Panther tank. However, the 76mm gun was generally considered insufficient to penetrate the thick, well-sloped frontal armor of the late-war German heavy tanks, a fact that fueled the skepticism of many American tankers who favored heavier guns. The M18 designers argued that attempting to mount a larger, heavier cannon, such as the 90mm, would have severely compromised the vehicle's entire design philosophy by sacrificing the critical element of speed. They maintained that the Hellcat's tactical employment was not about head-on duels, but about using its speed to achieve flanking positions where the 76 mm round could easily and lethally engage the thinner side and rear plating. The gun's lighter weight and lower recoil also allowed for the use of the high-speed, power-assisted turret traverse, which was a huge advantage in a quick ambush scenario. Critics, however, pointed to the early battles in Europe where crews were often forced into frontal engagements and found themselves helpless against the German heavy armor, leading to high losses. The psychological comfort of a larger gun, which the crews of the later M36 Jackson tank destroyer would enjoy, was a powerful argument against retaining the smaller 76 mm weapon in the Hellcat. Despite the controversy, the 76 mm M1A1 was an incredibly accurate weapon and, when coupled with the Hellcat's speed, proved to be an exceptionally deadly combination in the hands of a skilled crew. The introduction of new, improved ammunition, such as the armor-piercing composite rigid shot (APCR), helped to slightly increase the penetration capability, providing a much-needed boost in confidence for the crews. Ultimately, the debate underscored the M18's role as a specialist vehicle, a weapon of precision and opportunity, whose primary asset was not the size of its shell, but the lightning-fast delivery of that shell. It was a machine that demanded its crews think differently about armored warfare, relying on intellect and agility to make the most of its firepower, rather than simply relying on a brute force approach. The M18 Hellcat's top speed, an astonishing 55 miles per hour on a paved road, was a strategic asset that fundamentally altered the dynamics of the battlefield for its deployment. This speed was not a mere luxury. It was the entire basis of the Tank Destroyer Command's theory of maneuver defense and aggressive counterattack, making the Hellcat the perfect tool for the job. It allowed the tank destroyer battalions to be held in reserve, ready to respond to enemy breakthroughs at a moment's notice, covering ground that would take traditional armored units hours to traverse. The Hellcat could race far ahead of the main Allied armored spearhead, scouting for German counterattacks and setting up deadly forward ambushes to disrupt enemy logistics and organization. Its velocity enabled the signature shoot and scoot tactic, where the Hellcat would fire from a predetermined ambush point and then instantly speed away to a second, pre-planned position. By the time the heavy German tanks, with their slow turret traverse and limited cross-country speed, could even zero in on the Hellcat's muzzle flash, the vehicle was already miles away or concealed in a new location. This rapid displacement created an illusion of being in multiple places at once, confusing German commanders who struggled to locate and counter a threat that moved faster than their communication lines. In the defensive role, the Hellcat's speed was invaluable for plugging sudden and dangerous gaps in the line, allowing a small, mobile unit to buy precious time for larger, slower formations to redeploy. The incredible engine power and light weight also translated into superior acceleration and cross-country performance, enabling the M18 to navigate dense forests and broken terrain with ease. This terrain agility meant the Hellcat could often appear on the flanks of enemy columns from completely unexpected directions, maximizing the lethality of its 76 mm gun against the thinly armored sides of German vehicles. The high-speed mobility also proved crucial for crew survival, allowing damaged Hellcats to often escape from engagements that would have left a slower tank, such as a Sherman, stranded and doomed. It was the ultimate expression of asymmetric warfare, where a light, fast vehicle completely nullified the advantage of the enemy's heavy armor simply by denying them the opportunity to land a single, accurate hit. The M18 Hellcat proved that in the chaotic, ever-changing environment of the European theater, the ability to control time and distance was a more potent weapon than simply possessing a thick hide. One of the most defining moments for the M18 Hellcat's combat reputation occurred during the fierce fighting in the Lorraine region of France in the late summer and early autumn of 1944. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, operating with the U.S. Third Army, famously utilized the Hellcat's speed to devastating effect against a series of aggressive German counterattacks. The Germans, attempting to slow the rapid American advance, deployed their most potent armored formations, including the formidable Panther tanks, in a desperate bid to stabilize the collapsing front. It was in the open fields and wooded areas of Lorraine that the Hellcat crews perfected their tactic of using reconnaissance to find the enemy and speed to dictate the terms of the engagement. In a particularly notable engagement near the French town of Ericourt, the M18s were instrumental in repelling a major German armored offensive spearheaded by the 5th Panzer Army. The Hellcats were able to rapidly reposition themselves multiple times, catching the German tanks in a deadly crossfire and repeatedly hitting their flanks before they could even align their powerful main guns. The confusion sown by the lightning-fast attacks caused the German commanders to significantly overestimate the number of American armored units they were facing, leading to caution and missed opportunities. In one famous action, a single platoon of M18s was credited with destroying multiple Panther tanks by simply outmaneuvering them, exploiting the Panther's slow turret traverse and vulnerability to side shots. The rapid speed allowed the Hellcats to cover miles of front line in minutes, responding to every crisis point and ensuring that every German armored thrust was met with an immediate, lethal counter-response. The success of the Hellcats in Lorraine delivered a brutal lesson to the German commanders who had previously mocked the American doctrine, proving that superior mobility could overcome superior armor. The fighting in this region validated every design decision made on the M18, showing that the calculated risk of light armor was worth the immense tactical flexibility provided by its blistering speed. By the end of the operation, the Hellcat was no longer a subject of ridicule but a grudgingly respected, high-priority target, a ghost on the battlefield that could appear and disappear with terrifying efficiency. The lessons learned here would set the standard for the deployment of the M18 for the remainder of the war, establishing its reputation as the most effective tank destroyer fielded by the United States. As the M18 Hellcat began to rack up an impressive kill ratio and established its dominance in maneuver warfare, the initial German mockery swiftly transformed into grudging respect and serious concern. German intelligence reports started to emphasize the Hellcat's extreme speed as its single most dangerous characteristic, recognizing that they were fighting a completely new and unanticipated type of threat. Commanders began issuing specific tactical directives to counter the M18, ordering their heavy tanks to prioritize maintaining a hull-down position and never to expose their flanks during a suspected engagement. The typical German armored response, relying on overwhelming firepower and thick frontal armor, was simply too slow and methodical to cope with the M18's rapid hit-and-run tactics. The sheer speed of the Hellcat effectively negated the long-range advantage of the German 88mm and 75mm cannons, as the M18 was rarely in any one position long enough to be accurately ranged. German field manuals started to emphasize the need for infantry support to screen the flanks of their heavy armor, specifically to prevent the M18 from executing its signature flanking ambush. They recognized that the open-top turret was a weakness and began to specifically target Hellcats with concentrated mortar and artillery fire, aiming for high-angle shrapnel attacks that could bypass the frontal armor. Snipers and dedicated anti-tank teams were given a high priority to engage any spotted Hellcats, understanding that a quick elimination was necessary before the vehicle could bring its main gun to bear. In a remarkable shift, the very aspect of the American tank destroyer doctrine that had been laughed at, the emphasis on speed, became the most feared element of the M18's presence on the battlefield. German tank crews often found themselves frustrated, having to spend valuable time and ammunition engaging phantom targets that would flash into view, fire around, and then disappear into the tree line or behind a ridge. The M18 forced the Germans to slow down their own operations, forcing them to adopt a more cautious approach to armored maneuvers and reducing the effectiveness of their previously unstoppable blitzkrieg-style breakthroughs. The Hellcat essentially rewrote the rules of the encounter, turning the hunter into the hunted and disrupting the Germans' operational tempo with a persistent and extremely fast threat. This reluctant and belated shift in German tactics was perhaps the highest compliment to the M18, as it showed that the most important element of the American design was not its firepower, but its sheer velocity and agility. The M18 Hellcat's most famous and dangerous opponent on the Western Front was arguably the German Panzer V Panther, a tank renowned for its excellent sloped armor and powerful 75 mm high-velocity gun. A head-on engagement between the two vehicles was considered suicidal for the Hellcat crew, as the Panther's frontal plate was virtually impenetrable by the M18's 76 mm round. This reality, however, simply reinforced the need for the Hellcat to operate as a true tank destroyer, relying entirely on its speed to engage the Panther under the most advantageous conditions. The Panther's major weakness was its side and rear armor, which the M18's gun could reliably penetrate, especially when utilizing the newer, high-penetration ammunition. The Hellcat's agility allowed it to quickly move into positions where the heavy Panther's slow turret traverse and lumbering movement could not keep up with the threat. Many successful Hellcat engagements involved working in pairs or platoons, with one M18 serving as bait, drawing the Panther's attention, while the other used its extreme speed to move into a fatal flanking position. This cat-and-mouse game required incredible nerve, precision driving, and flawless communication, transforming the battlefield into a high-speed, three-dimensional chess match. In numerous encounters, the M18 demonstrated that a doctrine focused on speed could completely nullify the advantage of superior protection and firepower, a fact that was constantly surprising to the German crews. The Hellcat became a perfect counterpunch to the Panther, designed not to beat it in a fair fight, but to exploit every single structural and mechanical vulnerability in the German design. Reports from the field consistently highlight the M18's ability to simply run rings around the slower German armor, forcing them to fire at a rapidly moving target or be hit in their vulnerable tracks and sides. The M18's victory was a philosophical one, proving that a focus on mobility was a superior design choice for a tank-killing vehicle than the Germans' reliance on sheer defensive mass. The Panther was a masterpiece of defensive engineering, but the Hellcat's sheer velocity was an offensive masterpiece, a perfect embodiment of the American belief in a rapid, decisive, and surgical engagement. The Battle of the Bulge, the massive German Ardennes offensive launched in December 1944, provided the ultimate crucible for the M18 Hellcat and the tank destroyer doctrine. The rapid and unexpected German thrust caught the American lines completely off guard, creating exactly the kind of fluid, fast-moving crisis that the tank destroyer command was designed to address. The Hellcats were immediately thrown into the fray, their high speed being crucial for rapidly deploying to critical areas and desperately attempting to slow the advance of the German armored columns. In the snow-covered forests and frozen roads of the Ardennes, the Hellcat's low ground pressure and high power-to-weight ratio gave it an advantage over the heavier, frequently bogged-down German tanks. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion is particularly famous for its heroic actions at the Siege of Bastogne, where the unit played a vital role in the defense of the surrounded American paratroopers. Operating in a dense, defensive screen, the Hellcats utilized the broken terrain and poor visibility to set up devastating ambushes, firing on the German armor at close range before quickly withdrawing into the woods. Their ability to rapidly shift positions and maintain a persistent, multifaceted threat was instrumental in convincing the German commanders that the American resistance was much stronger than it actually was. The M18's open-top turret proved a liability in the bitter cold and snow, but the crews found ways to adapt, often utilizing canvas covers and extreme winter gear to maintain their operational effectiveness. The constant, high-speed movement in the freezing conditions was a testament to the vehicle's mechanical reliability and the sheer tenacity of its crews under extreme duress. The Hellcat crews faced the heaviest German armor, including both Panthers and Tigers, and relied almost entirely on their superior speed and knowledge of the terrain to survive and achieve their kills. The Battle of the Bulge was the moment when the M18 definitively shed any lingering doubts about its combat effectiveness, proving its design was ideally suited for crisis management and fast response counterattacks. Their successful, highly mobile defense helped break the back of the German offensive, proving that speed was a decisive strategic weapon even in the most chaotic and desperate circumstances of the war. The M18 Hellcat officially holds the distinction of having the highest kill-to-loss ratio of any American armored vehicle fielded during the Second World War, a testament to its radical design. The very officers in the German High Command who had once dismissed the American tank destroyer concept were forced to concede that the Hellcat represented a dangerous and successful deviation from traditional armored warfare. Its production run ended with over 2,500 units manufactured, and the M18 served with distinction until the end of the war, leaving an indelible mark on the history of military vehicle design. The Hellcat proved the validity of the American tank destroyer doctrine, demonstrating that mobility, when prioritized above all else, could be a decisive equalizer against superior enemy protection and firepower. Its technical innovations, particularly the torsion bar suspension and the powerful, lightweight engine, influenced the design of subsequent American armored fighting vehicles for decades to come. While the Tank Destroyer Command was eventually disbanded after the war, largely due to the convergence of tank and tank destroyer roles into a single multi-role main battle tank, the M18's influence persisted. The lessons learned about the tactical power of high-velocity ambush and rapid displacement continue to inform modern military tactics and the design of light, fast-attack armored vehicles. The M18 Hellcat remains a celebrated example of a specialized weapon system that was perfectly designed for a singular purpose, executing its role with a deadly and unmatched efficiency. It will always be remembered as the vehicle that turned the mockery of the German armored corps into grudging respect, showing them that the fastest vehicle on the battlefield often had the last and most lethal word. The Hellcat story is a compelling reminder that innovation in warfare is not always about bigger guns and thicker armor, but often about finding the right balance of speed, surprise, and sheer audacity. Its continued presence in military museums and history books serves as a powerful symbol of American ingenuity and the ability of a specialized force to overcome a technologically superior enemy through sheer velocity. The ultimate legacy of the M18 is that of a nimble predator, a true tank hunter whose speed became its armor, securing its place not only in history, but in the legend of the European campaign.